She laughed at his simple life, until a storm trapped her on his farm overnight. Thunder cracked across the darkening sky as Sophia Parker gripped her steering wheel tighter. The GPS on her dashboard flickered ominously before going completely dark. Perfect. Just perfect. No, 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 she muttered, tapping frantically at the screen. Her sleek silver Audi purred along the winding mountain road, far from the interstate she should have been on. The navigation system had rerouted her through this scenic shortcut that was now looking like a catastrophic mistake. Rain pounded against the windshield as if seeking personal revenge. The quarterly marketing presentation that had kept her working late was safely delivered, but now she was hopelessly lost in what appeared to be the middle of nowhere, with no cell service and a storm that seemed determined to swallow the world. A sharp crack sounded beneath her tire, followed by the unmistakable hiss of escaping air. The steering wheel jerked hard to the right. "You've got to be kidding me," Sophia hissed, carefully guiding the car to the narrow shoulder. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel for a moment, her normally impeccable composure cracking. The rain intensified, drumming a mocking rhythm on the roof. Through the downpour, she spotted a faint golden glow in the distance, some kind of structure set back from the road. Shelter, possibly. Help, hopefully. Sophia grabbed her purse and the emergency flashlight from her glove compartment. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the car door and was immediately assaulted by the full force of the storm. By the time she reached what appeared to be a long driveway, her designer blazer was soaked through, her silk blouse clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Her carefully styled bob was plastered to her head, and her leather pumps sank into the muddy ground with each step. As she drew closer, she realized the structure wasn't a house but some sort of workshop or studio. Light spilled from large windows, and despite the hammering rain, she could hear the faint sound of music. Sophia raised her fist and knocked firmly on the wooden door. When no response came, she knocked again, louder this time, desperation giving her strength. The music stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached, and the door swung open. A tall man stood in the doorway, sawdust clinging to his flannel shirt, a look of surprise on his bearded face. His eyes, a startling shade of green, narrowed slightly as he took in her drenched appearance. "I'm sorry to disturb you," Sophia began, attempting to sound as professional as one could while dripping on a stranger's doorstep. "My car has a flat tire, and I don't have cell service. May I use your phone?" The man didn't immediately respond, simply studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Please," she added, hating the note of vulnerability that crept into her voice. "I'm not usually the damsel in distress type, but I'm making an exception tonight." Something in her tone seemed to break through his reserve. His expression softened slightly. "No phone service up here during storms," he said, his voice deep and unexpectedly gentle. "Roads will be washed out by now too." As if to emphasize his point, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the landscape around them. The road she'd come from was already transforming into a muddy river. "Come in before you catch pneumonia," he said, stepping aside. "I'm Ethan Miller." Sophia hesitated for just a moment before crossing the threshold. The workshop was warm, filled with the rich scent of freshly cut wood. Handcrafted furniture in various stages of completion filled the space, each piece displaying extraordinary craftsmanship. "Sophia Parker," she replied, extending her hand automatically, then wincing as water dripped from her sleeve. "I apologize for the intrusion. I wouldn't be here if I had any other option." "Most people don't end up here by choice," Ethan replied with a hint of wry humor. He turned away, disappearing briefly into an adjoining room before returning with a clean towel and what appeared to be a flannel shirt and sweatpants. "Bathrooms through there. You should change before you freeze." Sophia accepted the clothes with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. She was used to controlling situations, not being at the mercy of strangers. "Thank you," she said stiffly. "I'll compensate you for your trouble, of course." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Ethan's face. "Money's not much use out here during a storm, Ms. Parker." He turned back to a half-finished table. But we can discuss your proper city recompense after you're dry. As Sophia retreated to change, she couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully ordered world had just been tilted on its axis, and the storm outside was only part of the reason. When Sophia emerged from the bathroom, she felt like a different person, and not in a good way. The flannel shirt hung nearly to her knees, and she'd had to roll the sweatpants up several times to avoid tripping. Her designer clothes hung limply over a wooden drying rack Ethan had set up near the wood stove. "Feel better?" Ethan asked without looking up from his work. "Warmer, at least," Sophia replied, running her fingers through her damp hair. She watched as his hands moved with practiced precision over the wood, sanding in smooth, even strokes. His focus was absolute, as if she weren't even there. "Is this what you do for a living?" she asked, circling the workshop. Beautiful pieces in various stages of completion were arranged throughout the space, chairs with elegant curves, tables with intricate inlays, cabinets with perfect proportions. "This is what I do," he answered simply. "Living comes from that." She approached a completed rocking chair positioned near the window. Running her fingers along the arm, she marveled at how the wood felt almost warm, alive. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the chair. Ethan nodded, finally looking up. "That's what it's for." Sophia sat, surprised by how perfectly the chair seemed to embrace her. "This is incredible craftsmanship," she admitted. "You must sell to high-end galleries or designers." A small smile touched his lips. "Sometimes. When I need to." "What do you mean, when you need to?" "With talent like this, you could be supplying furniture to collectors across the country." Ethan set down his sandpaper. "Not everyone measures success by how much they sell or how far their name travels." Sophia bristled slightly. "I wasn't implying." "You weren't implying anything," he interrupted calmly. "You were stating, very directly, your definition of success. I just happen to have a different one." Thunder crashed outside, making Sophia jump slightly. Rain pelted against the windows with renewed vigor, and the wind howled through the trees surrounding the workshop. "You're stuck here tonight," Ethan said matter-of-factly. "There's a loft upstairs with a spare bed. I'll stay down here." "I couldn't possibly." "It's not an invitation to debate, Ms. Parker. It's physics. Those roads are impassable until morning at least." The finality in his tone silenced her. This was so far outside her comfort zone. She, Sophia Parker, who commanded boardrooms and directed teams of 30, was completely at the mercy of this stranger and his mountain. "I have a major client meeting tomorrow," she said, more to herself than to him. "Then you'll miss it," he replied without sympathy. "Unless you've figured out how to control the weather." Sophia felt a flash of irritation. "Do you always speak so bluntly to people you've just met?" "Only when they need it." He stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Are you hungry?" The abrupt change of subject threw her, but now that he mentioned it, she realized she hadn't eaten since a hurried lunch nearly 10 hours ago. "I could eat," she admitted. "Good. You can help." He moved toward a small kitchen area at the back of the workshop and began pulling ingredients from cupboards. Sophia followed hesitantly. "I should warn you, I'm not much of a cook." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, you eat at restaurants or order in?" "My time is valuable," she defended. "Spending hours cooking doesn't make economic sense when I can use that time to secure a new client." He handed her an onion and a knife. "Dice this. Consider it payment for lodging." As they worked side by side in the small kitchen, Ethan with practiced efficiency, Sophia with determined concentration, an unexpected ease developed between them. The soup they prepared was simple but hearty, and the freshly baked bread Ethan pulled from the oven filled the space with an irresistible aroma. They ate at a rough-hewn table by the wood stove, the storm creating a strangely intimate backdrop to their meal. Despite herself, Sophia found the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease. "So what drives someone to live in isolation on a mountain?" she asked, cradling a mug of tea. Ethan considered her for a moment. What drives someone to dedicate their life to marketing products people don't need? Sophia laughed despite herself. That's not a fair characterization. I help companies connect with consumers who do need their products. Is that what helps you sleep at night? There was no judgment in his tone, only genuine curiosity. I sleep just fine, thank you, she replied, though the answer felt hollow even to her. And you're avoiding my question. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Not everyone who chooses solitude is running from something, Ms. Parker. Sometimes they're running toward something else. As the storm raged outside and the fire crackled within, Sophia found herself wondering what exactly this enigmatic craftsman had been running toward, and why she suddenly felt like she might be the one who had been running from something all along. Morning brought pale sunlight streaming through the workshop windows. Sophia woke disoriented, taking a moment to remember where she was. The loft was simple but comfortable, with handcrafted furniture that put her expensive minimalist apartment to shame. Downstairs, she found Ethan already at work, his attention focused on what appeared to be a musical instrument taking shape under his careful hands. Is that a violin? She asked, still wrapped in the oversized flannel she'd slept in. Ethan glanced up. Cello. Coffee's ready if you want some. Sophia helped herself, noticing that her clothes were dry and neatly folded on a chair. She picked them up, grateful but unsettled by his thoughtfulness. Thank you, she said, gesturing with the clothes. I'll get changed and be out of your way as soon as possible. Roads won't be passable for a few more hours, he replied, turning back to his work. Flash floods from storms like that take time to recede. Sophia bit back her frustration. Every hour here was an hour away from damage control at work. She changed quickly and returned to find Ethan completely absorbed in fitting a delicate piece of wood to the cello's neck. I didn't realize you made instruments too, she said, watching him work. The furniture pays the bills. This is what I love. His hands moved with such precision it was almost like watching a surgeon. Curious, Sophia wandered to a cabinet in the corner that stood partially open. Inside, she glimpsed several completed string instruments. May I? She asked. Ethan nodded without looking up. She carefully opened the cabinet to find violins, violas, and cellos of extraordinary beauty. Each was unique, with different woods and subtle variations in design. She reached out to touch one, then hesitated. It's okay, Ethan said quietly, suddenly beside her. They're meant to be touched. Played. Loved. He selected a violin and handed it to her. The wood was warm, almost buttery under her fingers, with a rich amber finish that caught the light. This is museum quality, she whispered. No. Museums are where beautiful things go to die. There was unexpected passion in his voice. Instruments need to live, to breathe music. Do you play? She asked. In answer, he took the violin from her hands, tucked it under his chin, and drew the bow across the strings. The sound that emerged filled the workshop with such pure, aching beauty that Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. He played for only a minute before stopping and returning the violin to its place. The silence that followed seemed almost holy. Where did you learn to play like that? Sophia asked, her voice hushed. Juilliard, he replied simply. She stared at him in disbelief. You were at Juilliard? What happened? Ethan closed the cabinet carefully. I realized I loved creating instruments more than playing them. And I needed space to hear my own thoughts. So you just walked away? From a career most musicians would kill for. I didn't walk away from anything, he corrected. I walked toward something better. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. A middle-aged man in a ranger's uniform stood outside. Morning, Ethan. Roads are clearing up. Saw a car with a flat down the way, figured it might belong to your visitor. Thanks, Frank. This is Sophia Parker. She got caught in the storm last night. The ranger tipped his hat. "Ma'am. I can give you a lift into town if you need. There's a mechanic who can help with your tire." "Thank you," Sophia said, feeling a strange reluctance. "I appreciate that." As she gathered her belongings, Ethan disappeared into another room, returning with a small wooden box. "For your drive back to the city," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a delicately carved wooden pendant on a simple leather cord, a spiral that seemed to unfold endlessly into itself. "I couldn't possibly." "It's just wood," he interrupted. "Something to remember that sometimes detours aren't disasters." Their eyes met, and Sophia felt something shift inside her, as if some essential truth had been disturbed. "I should go," she said, suddenly flustered. "Thank you for everything." Ethan simply nodded. "Safe journey, Sophia." It wasn't until she was in the ranger's truck, headed down the mountain, that she realized it was the first time he had used her first name. And it wasn't until she was sitting in the small-town garage, waiting for her tire to be replaced, that she realized she was still wearing the pendant, her fingers unconsciously tracing the spiral pattern as her mind replayed the sound of Ethan's violin filling the workshop with something that felt remarkably like freedom. Sophia strode through the glass doors of Parker Marketing Group exactly 72 hours after her unexpected detour. She'd managed to reschedule her missed meeting and catch up on most of her work remotely from her hotel room in the small mountain town while waiting for her car to be repaired. "Thank God you're back," her assistant Ryan said, falling into step beside her. "The Westbrook account is imploding, Jared's team missed their deadline for the pharmaceutical campaign, and the board wants to discuss acquisition offers." Sophia nodded, absorbing the information as they entered her corner office overlooking the city skyline. "Send me the Westbrook files first, then schedule a team meeting for 11. Tell Jared I need to see him before that." Ryan hesitated. "And the board?" "Tell them I'll have a response by end of day." She settled into her ergonomic chair, already reaching for her tablet. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked suddenly. "You seem different." Sophia's hand unconsciously went to the wooden pendant beneath her silk blouse. "I'm fine. Just focused." But as she immersed herself in spreadsheets, campaign metrics, and crisis management, she found her mind repeatedly drifting to a sunlit workshop filled with the scent of wood and the sound of violin music. She caught herself staring out the window at the concrete jungle below, wondering what Ethan was crafting today, whether rain was falling on his workshop roof. The afternoon board meeting was exactly as expected. A larger company wanted to acquire Parker Marketing Group for a substantial sum. It was the exit strategy she'd been working toward for years. "This is what success looks like, Sophia," Charles Westfall, the board chairman, told her with a paternal smile. "You've built something valuable enough that others want to buy it." She nodded, accepting congratulations, discussing terms and timelines, but a voice that sounded strangely like Ethan's kept whispering, "Not everyone measures success by how much they sell or how far their name travels." That evening, alone in her penthouse apartment, Sophia poured herself a glass of wine and wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled before her, a twinkling testament to human ambition. Her reflection stared back, perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect life. So why did it suddenly feel so empty? She pulled out the wooden pendant, studying how the grain flowed through the carved spiral. It was beautiful in its simplicity, yet infinitely complex, like the man who had made it. On impulse, she opened her laptop and searched for Ethan Miller Luthier. To her surprise, several results appeared. Articles in specialty magazines praised his instruments as some of the finest being made today. A waiting list for his violin stretched years long. Famous musicians spoke reverently of his craftsmanship. Yet he lived simply, worked when he wanted to, and seemed utterly content in his isolation. No corporate ladder to climb, no board to please, no acquisition target to hit. Her phone rang. It was Charles Westfall. "The buyers want to meet tomorrow," he said without preamble. "They're offering an additional 10% if we can fast-track the acquisition." You'd stay on as director for 2 years, then transition out with a golden parachute that would set you up for life. It was everything she'd worked for. Everything she'd sacrificed weekends, relationships, and peace of mind to achieve. "Can I have the night to think about it?" she asked. Charles's surprise was palpable. "What's there to think about?" "This is the brass ring, Sophia." After hanging up, she sat in the dark, city lights painting patterns across her floor. She thought about the life stretched before her, more meetings, more campaigns, more money, more of the same emptiness she already felt. Then she thought about Ethan's hands, moving with such care over wood that seemed to come alive at his touch. About the sound of rain on a workshop roof. About the first real sleep she'd had in years, lulled by storm and silence in a mountain loft. With sudden clarity, Sophia realized she'd been asking herself the wrong question all along. Not, "What do I want to achieve?" but, "What kind of life do I want to live?" She reached for her phone, scrolling until she found the business card Frank the Ranger had given her. "If you ever need anything up this way," he'd said with a kind smile. Taking a deep breath, she dialed. The workshop door stood before her, exactly as she remembered. Sophia hesitated, second-guessing herself for the 100th time since leaving the city 3 days ago. In her hand, she clutched a folder containing her hastily assembled proposal. Before she could knock, the door swung open. Ethan stood there, surprise evident on his face. "Sophia." "Hi," she said, suddenly feeling foolish. "I was in the neighborhood." One eyebrow raised skeptically. "People aren't in the neighborhood here." "Fair point," she conceded with a small smile. "Can I come in? I have something I'd like to discuss with you." He stepped aside, allowing her to enter. The workshop was as she remembered, warm, filled with the scent of wood and the quiet presence of things being carefully created. "Nice to see you wearing appropriate footwear this time," he remarked, glancing at her hiking boots. She laughed. "I learned my lesson. Though I drove here, no storm-related emergencies today." "What brings you back to the middle of nowhere?" he asked, returning to a chair he'd been working on. Sophia took a deep breath. "I have a business proposition." Ethan's expression closed slightly. "I'm not interested in mass-producing my furniture for some city boutique." "That's not what I'm proposing," she said quickly. "May I?" She gestured to his workbench. Curiously, he nodded. Sophia laid out her folder and began explaining. "After I left here, I did some research. Your instruments are considered masterpieces, but only a handful of musicians even know how to find you. Meanwhile, talented young musicians struggle to afford quality instruments." She opened the folder, showing him the business plan she'd created. "I'm proposing a foundation. You continue making instruments exactly as you do now, at your own pace. The foundation purchases them at fair market value and places them with promising musicians who couldn't otherwise afford them, on loan, not as gifts." Ethan crossed his arms. "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" "I run the foundation. I handle the business side, the musicians, the placements. You just create." He studied her for a long moment. "Why?" It was the question she'd been dreading, and the one she needed most to answer honestly. "Because when I was here, listening to you play that violin, I remembered something I'd forgotten, what it feels like when work is more than a means to an end. When it's an expression of something real." She touched the pendant, still hanging around her neck. "I don't want to spend my life selling things people don't need. I want to connect people with something that might change their lives." Ethan was silent, his expression unreadable. "I've already secured initial funding," she continued nervously. "I sold my company, well, I'm in the process of selling it. And I've leased a small office in town." "In town?" he repeated, surprised. "You're moving here?" Sophia nodded. "I found a cottage about 20 minutes from here. Nothing fancy, but it has a great view of the valley." "You're giving up your city life? Your career?" For this? I'm not giving up anything, she said, echoing his words from days before. I'm running towards something better. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features. You really are something, Sophia Parker. Is that a yes? She asked hopefully. It's a, let's talk more about it, he replied. Over dinner, maybe. I still have some of that bread. 6 months later, the first Resonance Foundation instrument, a viola crafted by Ethan Miller, was placed with a 14-year-old prodigy from an underserved community in Detroit. By year's end, 20 more instruments had found their way into the hands of deserving musicians across the country. The foundation office in town remained small, just Sophia and a part-time assistant, but its impact grew with each instrument placed. Ethan continued to work at his own pace, creating pieces of exceptional beauty in the same workshop where Sophia had once taken shelter from a storm. On quiet evenings, they often sat together on his porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of amber and gold. Sometimes they spoke of the foundation, of new ideas and possibilities. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, each content in the presence of the other. Do you ever miss it? Ethan asked one evening as they watched stars appear above the ridgeline. The city? The power lunches? Being in charge of everything? Sophia considered the question seriously. I miss aspects of it, she admitted. The energy, sometimes. The challenge of tackling a complex problem. She reached for his hand, her fingers interlacing with his, calloused from years of craftsmanship, strong and gentle all at once. But I was never really in charge of everything, she continued. I was just reacting, to competitors, to market trends, to board expectations. I was free to make any choice I wanted, as long as it was the one that maximized profit. The night air wrapped around them, cool and fragrant with pine. And now? He asked softly. Sophia smiled, thinking of the foundation's growing impact, of the simple cottage she now called home, of the man beside her who had helped her see that detours sometimes led exactly where you needed to go. Now I'm building something that matters, she said. With someone who matters more. As if to seal her words, music drifted from the workshop where a quartet of young musicians, recipients of Ethan's instruments, were practicing for their upcoming recital. The melody floated across the porch, a testament to the unexpected harmony that can emerge when two different worlds collide, and choose to build something new together.